Great evening, everyone. Good evening. I am Christopher Lambry Jr., a junior political science major on the pre-law track from Atlanta, Georgia. And today I have both the honor and profound privilege to welcome to our panel a man whose life and legacy embody the enduring spirit of justice, resilience, and reconciliation, Justice Albie Sachs. A freedom fighter, constitutional scholar, and one of the architects of South Africa's post-apartheid constitution, Justice Sachs devoted his life to dismantling systems of oppression and building a society grounded in dignity, equality, and human rights. His work on the Constitutional Court helped shape not only South Africa legal landscape, but also global conversations around restorative justice, democracy, and forgiveness. Justice Sachs' journey from surviving a brutal car bombing that cost him his arm and vision in one eye, to choosing compassion over revenge, stands as a living testament to the idea that without justice, there is no humanity. His life reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the insistence of hope in the face of it. And as we reflect on his extraordinary contributions to law, art, and freedom, I am reminded of a South African proverb: people are not people without other people. Justice Sachs has shown us that through both word and deed, that our humanity is bound together. And the true measure of justice lies in how deeply we honor that connection. Please join me in welcoming Justice Albie Sachs. And so, very briefly, we're also going to have our other scholars on the panel introduce themselves as well.
Hi, how's everybody doing? My name is Cameron Gaskins. I'm a freshman, finance major, sociology minor on the pre-law track from Atlanta, Georgia, and I had the privilege and honor of interviewing Justice Sachs.
Greetings, brothers and guests. I'm John Jalen Gwynn. I'm a second-year chemistry psychology double major on the pre-medical track from the historic Hartford, Connecticut, and I have the honor and privilege to interview Justice Sachs.
So just for context for the audience, Justice Sachs was raised in South Africa by a white single mother who held radical beliefs and was actively involved in protests. So my question for you, Justice Sachs, is: was your strong sense of justice shaped more by your mother's progressive upbringing or by your innate personality?
Before answering, can I just say, wow. 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 At three wows or three wow moments. I came here to make presentations. I haven't given any yet. The first wow was Sunday morning in the Ebenezer Church. So then if you say the Reverend Senator or the Senator Reverend Warnock, you might seen on TV during the election some time back, and he seemed very kindly, nice, gentle guy. Wow.
He did not use his name with each. I was very courageous.
It's a little wow, that's me. So that was extraordinary. The passion, the commitment, the meaning of his belief. I happen to be very secular. I had to fight hard for my right not to pretend beliefs I didn't have, which has made me hugely respectful of the beliefs of others. Belief to me is number one for all human beings. And I've never seen so much belief packed in one room with beautiful singing, intense emotion, and a kind of reference to what's going on in the world and in this country. That's a big first wow. The second wow was yesterday evening We were invited out to dinner. Vanessa phones for an Uber. A car comes. There's no driver.
The Waymo.
There's no driver. And Vanessa says, get in. I was so nervous, but I don't want to be more cowardly than my wife, so I got in. I sat the whole time like that. And we drove through Atlanta for 15, 20 minutes, arrived at the destination. Wow, I haven't stopped talking about it. I'm writing about it, and now I've got a new audience, and I'm telling you about it. And the third is a now wow. Wow. What a space, what a place, what a place. We were so connected with African American struggles in South Africa. It was like part of our struggle. And we got so much support from the African American community. And we followed the struggles here. I still remember intense debates we had. Martin Luther King, Mr. Nice Guy, strategic, thoughtful. Malcolm X. And we loved them both. We loved the fighting spirit of Malcolm X. We loved his defiance. He wasn't being nice. He was challenging. But we loved MLK, whose style and manner was closer to the ANC, African National Congress, bringing people in, winning them over, encouraging that block of opposition to open up a little bit, become less hegemonic. And now I'm sitting in this space and I see, I think that's W. Du Bois, one of our intellectual heroes. See Frederick Douglass. I think that's all that I can actually recognize from this distance. So this is not a place and a space where history was made, but it's a place and a space where history has been recorded. And I feel such real honor and delight to have been invited to come here and tell a bit of my story. It's really here. So the question is, in a way, what's a nice guy like me doing? Getting blown up and going to jail and with my white skin in the freedom struggle of black people. And I was going to ask you, give you a problem, for you, from information I'm giving you, to guess how old I am. But I already gave it away in the film, so. My story then goes back to the 6th of April, 1952. Where were you guys? Where were your parents? Probably didn't exist. Your grandparents, maybe. And I was a 17-year-old second-year law student. And that day was important. It was the tercentenary, 300 years, of the arrival in what's now Cape Town of a certain Dutch commander called Jan van Riebeeck, who planted a flag. And we were taught at school, South African history began. History being white, couldn't be more white than that. That is the idea. They're celebrating. And a few years earlier, the Afrikaner Nationalist Party, a section of the white population of Dutch origin, gained political power in a whites-only parliament and introduced a new word into the English language, apartheid. So we'd had slavery, enslavement before. We'd had colonialism, we'd had segregation, but this was a refinement, apartheid. and they were celebrating their power. Aeroplanes flying overhead, farming cars in the streets, public holiday. And there were about 200 of us in a hall, not a beautiful, spacious, well-lit hall with wonderful views like this, in a working class area, maybe 190 black people, 10 white people. And they're singing, my boye, my boye, my boye, Africa. My boye, my boye, my boye. Come back, Africa. Senzenina, Senzenina, what have we done? What have we done? Sad, sad songs of the oppressed people. And suddenly it changes. Dr. Maroka, Dr. Dadu, J.B. Marks, Katani Leba Papi, volunteers obey the orders, be ready for the action now. Volunteers obey the orders. They're calling for volunteers. To volunteers for the Defiance of Unjust Laws campaign, 1952, before the sit-ins in the years. And there were 6 apartheid laws that were being challenged. The past laws, every black man had to carry a document to present to any policeman who could stop him anywhere, day or night, going to his house and demand it without a warrant, show your pass. If you didn't, jail. Million prosecutions a year for pass. There'd be a curfew hour, 9 o'clock. A siren would go. Black people not allowed out on the streets without a permit from the white master or madam. Benches marked, whites only, whites only, whites only. The beaches, the bridges over the railway line, the railway carriages, everything, whites, 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 whites. They didn't have signs up at the schools, but if you classified as white, you had beautiful schools. Hospitals, even maternity hospitals from birth, even the graveyards were segregated, everything segregated, being challenged. And what is called the Suppression of Communism Act is being challenged. It was used by the regime imposing restrictions on people called banning orders. You can't attend gatherings of more than 2 people. I was banned twice, in fact, criminal offense. All these being now defied. And they're calling volunteers, obey the orders, volunteer calling for volunteers. And I say to my friend, I want to volunteer. You can't. Why? Because you're white. We're fighting racism. It's a black struggle led by black people. But I'll send your name forward. My name was sent forward, and in December, after I'd written my secondary exams, I was leading a group of 4 young white people into the General Post Office to sit down on seats marked non-whites only, which is the opposite of Rosa Parks. Sometimes some people come up with this idea that, well, apartheid was not good, but some good came out of it. There's only one good thing came out of apartheid, only one. Anti-apartheid. It's the only good thing, anti-apartheid. And I was volunteer number 8,942, something like that. And volunteer number 1 was a certain lawyer called Nelson Mandela. I'd never even heard of him before that. So he and his partner, Oliver Tambo, had the only law firm in the whole of South Africa. And he would have to carry a pass. He couldn't vote. He couldn't sit down on the seats. He couldn't go to the hospitals. His children couldn't go to the schools for the whites. But he could make some money. He was willing to sacrifice all that for the rights of these people. So that's how I came to be involved. I came from a political background. I was born into it. But I hated my parents assuming I would automatically follow in April's steps. Now in my second year at law school, I'm meeting a young crowd, my age, who are passionate, who are activists. And it wasn't only over politics. They were activists for life. They were so much more interesting and more energetic and spirited and questioning than my other colleagues whom I liked very much at university. There was a passion inside and an idealism, a commitment that is fantastic. So that was my launch into politics.
I appreciate you setting a vivid scene of South Africa, especially during the time that you grew up in. I guess to follow up on my brother's question, you painted a very vivid picture of a world of oppression where someone with your skin tone had a lot of privilege and someone with my skin tone did not, but yet you felt an innate sense to side with the Black African people. We did speak about coming from a political family, and I had the privilege of listening to your memoirs, and I know your mom, she did raise you in a way that is pretty radical compared to your counterparts. I guess my question is, why you, as a white South African man, do you feel like it was something that you were raised to believe, or is something about you as a person that pulled you to this calling?
It was both. It was both. My mom she was separated from my dad. My dad was the General Secretary of the Garment Workers Union. So trade unions, fighting for their rights, not just for wages, but for health, for leave pay, for dignity. But they were separated. And my mom would say to me, tidy up, tidy up. I'm now aged 4, and my little brother is 3. Uncle Moses is coming. And we would tidy up. And Uncle Moses wasn't Moses Cohen or Moses Cantor. He was Moses Kutani. And he was the General Secretary of the Communist Party of South Africa. And she was, it was called his typist. Today it would be PA, then it was the typist. And I had to tidy up. And I got a lot from my mom. Obviously my mother's milk, quite literally. Her values, and the care that mothers give to their kids, whatever the politics might be. But the most important gift given us in South Africa was to have a mother who's working for a black man and having enormous respect for him. That was the real world. That was the normal world. That was life for me. What was happening outside was crazy, was wicked, was wrong. And he used to joke. He'd say, Comrade Dre taught me to read and write in a night school, and now I'm her boss. And there's always a lot of humor in our movement, in our struggle. So that was part of the background. A part of me, from as long as I can remember, was a dreamer. I used to wonder about the world, I'd make up stories. We were different, and I quite liked being different. It wasn't connected with oppression. It was just different. You know, just to give you another example, my mother got into big trouble during World War II. She was called a Nazi sympathizer. Why? Because her then 5-year-old and 4-year-old children were telling the other children, you mustn't say the Germans are bad. It's the Nazis who are bad. And can I use that word, W-O-K-E? I was WOKE at the age of 5. At the age of 5. But there was a reason for that. We attended a kindergarten, a preschool place run by Mrs. Tish, our auntie, whose husband had been killed in a concentration camp in Germany. And she would sing, when we all had sleeping time in the afternoon, what's called Brahms, the German composer Brahms's Lullaby. It is very popular. Da, 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 da. I'll still remember, I don't remember the words. The first time I went to a cinema was with Uncle Walter, who had also fled from Germany. He'd been head of a group called the Harmony Melodies that came to the US, and the music was very popular during World War II. And he had to flee because he was a Jew. So that idea of correctness, not being associated with color, with the name, with religion, but with the morality, with humanity, was there sort of from very early on. But also, you mentioned the word privilege. I claim to be the most privileged human being on earth. It's a big claim. How many million people are there? 8 billion, 7 billion? And I claim out of 7 billion people on this planet, I'm the most privileged. And this is how I justify that. I was born into privilege that came with my white skin. Didn't ask it, I didn't like it, I didn't want it. I fought against privilege as such, but that was a fact. And it wasn't only I could go to the school of my choice, I could imagine anything for myself. I could imagine I would fly to the moon. I read Jules Verne flying to the moon. I could imagine I was discovering a microbe smaller than any scientist could appear that be prosperous. And black kids couldn't even imagine those things. You know, life was just survival. And the most they could imagine and hope for is to get through school and maybe get a job with sun to pain in. So that's the first privilege. The second privilege, the privilege of being welcomed into a freedom struggle and taking part in a freedom struggle. That's a huge privilege for any human being. I think those of you who've got parents and uncles and aunties who are in the civil rights movement know, have heard, you hear the stories. It's something special that bound you together with other people. You're fighting, you're sharing the pain, and you're breaking through, and there's setbacks, and some people collapse. But it's an amazing thing in life. You're not just going along. You're challenging the injustices. A huge privilege. In the privilege, as a lawyer, helping to write my country's constitution. So I'm a Madison and a Thurgood Marshall, because afterwards I'm put onto the court that's defending that constitution, our top court. And if that's not enough, I'm asked to help with the design of the court in which we function. And we choose the old Fort Prison in Johannesburg, where we say with a very dubious pride, both Gandhi and Mandela, both of whom are represented in this amazing building. But the only country that has a prison where both of them were locked up was South Africa. It's nicer to have the images because they are honored here, but that was the prison where we decided to place our constitutional court, like the Supreme Court. So for me, that's huge privilege upon privilege upon privilege. What would have been a sacrifice for me would have been to do nothing, to make money, get a big car, travel. I don't know what to do with a lot of money. That would have been sacrificing a soul, my spirit, are being like psychmates about life. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to sort of hit on something that you said. You mentioned, surviving and how people who are oppressed, sort of through that survival is how we connect. And I couldn't help but to reflect about our sort of the African American struggle here in the States, where one of the ways that we connected through that survival is through jazz music, it's through the arts. And I think one of the beautiful parts about you as a person is that you attribute your involvement to the struggle to poetry and music. And so, rather than politics at least. And so I want to ask, how can we incorporate that art back into our movements here? Because I think so much of what we've lost is that soulfulness that comes through when you look at the civil rights movement, when you look at so many great movements throughout time, it's that soulfulness. And I think it's often through art. And so how can we incorporate art back into our movements? And why is that so important to have that soulfulness be a part of the evenings like that?
I wouldn't come to Atlanta and tell the people here about soul. I come here to hear soul music and eat soul food. But I can share some of our experiences. And the actual trigger for me to become active was poetry. My first year at university, I didn't even know who to vote for. I don't think I voted these public elections. Second year, I'm going along the same lines. My mother says there's going to be a lecture by a South African poet. His name was Ace Krieger. Albie, you love poetry, go along. And I attend. And he's giving a lecture on a Spanish poet called Federico Lorca. Now, I didn't even know they had poets in Spain. I knew they had bullfights. And Lorca was a playwright and a poet in the 1930s. The people elected a Republican government. There was a challenge by people who called themselves fascists. Fascism wasn't just a swear word then. People proudly called themselves fascists. And with the support of Hitler and Mussolini, the fascists won. They brought down the government, killed many people, and they captured Lorca and executed him. It was at 5 p.m. And a poet that some of you might have heard of from Chile, Latin America, Pablo Neruda, wrote a poem at 5 p.m. A las 5 de la tarde, a las 5 de la tarde, a las 5 de la tarde. And he strode up and down the stage, speaking to the Spanish, English, some Afrikaans, some French. I was totally captivated. And what that lecture did for me, I love poetry. I love the inside of me, the dreamer, kind of beautiful world that's there and not there at the same time. And what it did was it made poetry from being intimate and personal and purely subjective. It connected that with the big public events of the world. And now I was ready. And I attended that meeting and in the Defiance campaign. So in that sense, poetry brought me into struggle. People said afterwards, Albie, you wrote a lot about culture. Why did you bring culture into the political struggle? I said it was the other way around. That piece that you heard, is music playing. Da, 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 dum. That music is from what used to be called a Negro spiritual, Going Home, which was used by a Czech composer called Dvorak, who visited New York in the 1890s. And he wrote what is called the New World Symphony. And he was nostalgic for his own country. So he used that music Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Da da dum da da dum. Da 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 dum. He used it in the slow movement, going home, going home. When I was locked up in solitary confinement, it's something horrible to be locked up with no company, nothing to do, no people, just you, yourself, and yourself. Staring at the wall, the toes, the wall, the toes, you get deeply depressed. And so I would sing songs. I would try to remember the number of states in the United States of America. And I knew that 2 had been added, Alaska and Hawaii. Did it make it from 48 to 50 or 50 to 52? I wasn't sure. And the only sounds you hear in jail are doors slamming, people screaming, sometimes drunk people, they can't bear being locked up, commands. There's nothing beautiful at all. And suddenly I hear whistling. Da, 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 da. That's the music that's used in that film. And it runs all the way through the Albie online exhibition. You heard the dum, da, 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 do, da, do. That's my heart, the heartbeat. And the creative they recorded it. And the creator was very cunning, because there's a little heart, if you notice when I signed my name Albie, the eye looked like a heart. So she did a figure. Now the figure's also got a story, because George Clooney and Amal Clooney decided to give awards for people who fought for justice, and they called them the Albies. And George did a drawing of a figure with one long arm, one short arm. And that figure is on the website. There's a yellow heart, and the heart is beating. And the creator said, if you want to go back to the landing page, put your cursor on Albie's heart. Now you see how life, art, imagination, music, visual art, these things interact. Right now there's an exhibition in Cape Town at the Museum of Contemporary Art Africa. It's an amazing building with an amazing museum. It was a grain silo before. Now it's been converted into a museum, and it has art from all over the continent and from the diaspora. And one of the exhibitions is called Spring is Rebellious, the life and art of Albie Sachs. And my work on the court, my work with artists from Mozambique, sculptors, painters, my work in South Africa with artists, had one picture of Dumili Feni, the most brilliant of all our artists, who had a huge influence on me. All of that's now incorporated into that program. I could take up the whole of the rest of our time just on the interaction between culture and life from Gloria.
Justice Sachs, I just want to say personally thank you for being an advocate and hero to human rights unequivocally. We heard you talk about a couple of things, not wanting to participate in a culture war, to be specific. I would say in our country today, culture war is very much the landscape of politics. People's beliefs, personal beliefs, can be very polarizing and charging and affect communities. Here at Morehouse, we are charged to be servant leaders and create a better world. Are there any words you can say to me and my brothers as we go out and fight for universal truths and rights? When we go up against personal beliefs, what are some words that you can leave with us that can
help us. Some things are very obvious. Be inspired by the people there. And they are famous and noted not because they made a lot of money, not because they killed a lot of people in war, not even because they got into machines and explored the universe. They're famous because they fought for rights, for dignity, for themselves, for their people, for humanity. So you've got those traditions that are enormously rich. Normally when I'm asked, what advice would you give, Justice Sachs, to young people like ourselves? I say the only advice I'd give to you is not to listen to the advice of old people like me, to be as challenging and daring and curious and even provocative as we were when we were young. But if you don't listen to my advice, then you're listening to my advice. If you're listening to my advice, you're not listening to my advice, you know what I mean? So I think I can't get away with that, ducking that question. And I think people find themselves in very, very different ways. For me in my generation, politics was at the center. Not political ambition, politics. Politics to overcome the terrible injustices that were there in the law, over it all the time, everywhere. So cruel, so harsh, so terrible. And just to live there and pretend you can have a normal life in that abnormal society was kind of impossible. Sometimes for some of us, politics became very arid, just ideas, thoughts, power, even the power of the people to destroy the power of the oppressors. I'd like to feel we never lost our humanity in the struggle for humanity. And that came out in a number of different ways. I remember at one stage Oliver Tambo, now we're living in exile, and he's the law partner of Mandela, and the ANC took a decision, Mandela's going to go underground to lead resistance in South Africa. Oliver Tambo's going to go out to Africa to mobilize international opinion to isolate South Africa. And I'm working in Mozambique, I still had two arms then, and he invites me to come to ANC headquarters in Lusaka. I'm very curious to know what's happening. And African style, he asked after my health, political situation. We don't rush into it. White style, I'm impatient, you know. Why am I here? Why am I here? He says, we have captured a number of enemy agents who are planning to destroy our organization. There's nothing in the ANC constitution that says, what do you do with captured enemy agents? So there's nothing in the Republican Constitution that says, what do you do with captured Democrats, or vice versa. And he said, it's very difficult. So I said, no, there are international instruments that say no degrading, inhuman punishment or treatment, no torture. And he says, we use torture. I can't believe it. We're fighting for freedom, they're using torture. He says it with a bleak face. And he discovered that in some of the ANC camps where military people were training to go back, they'd left their studies to learn how the art of war, to go back to fight for freedom in South Africa. Very hard to get back into the country, big problems in the camps, and very brutal treatment that people have been captured there. And I helped to write the country's constitution. I've written judgments, we call them opinions, like the one I mentioned. I'm very proud of them. But the legal document that, for me, is the most important is what we call it a code of conduct for a liberation movement in exile, fighting for freedom, forbidding the use of torture, and providing for procedures if people are accused of stabbing the comrade, or sexual assault, or stealing, or driving drunk, whatever it is, to have proper procedures, but especially not to use violence against captive peoples in order to extract information from them. Keeping our humanity, that was one way. Culture was another way. We had amazing, wonderful culture groups. Humor, there was always jokes and laughter and beauty. Some people criticize the Museum of Contemporary African Art, Art Africa. How can you spend money on paintings and sculpture and tapestries when so many people are going hungry, they don't have a roof over their head, no food? And I respond, are you saying the poor are not interested in beauty? That the poor only want a full stomach? That the few don't have dreams? So these are things that people need. We needed it to survive the political struggle, to keep our humanity. And I might say, after we forbade the use of torture, our morale improved. We got stronger. We got stronger. The other thing from my life that I want to mention that might have a relevance that goes beyond politics. In my case, the context was very political. After I was blown up, I called it, the day I was blown up, the best day of my life. And my grandson was, but Grandpa, you lost an arm inside in one eye. And I said, you what? You're in the struggle. You're waiting. Will they come for me today? Will I be brave? If they try to kill me, will I get through? They tried to kill me and I'd only lost an arm. I felt fantastic. They tried to kill me and I only lost an arm. Now somebody said, that's a definition of an optimist. Okay, that's that I'm an optimist. But, and then the next morning, after what I was told was a 7-hour operation, lots of blood, and by then they'd managed to detect HIV, so it was clean blood. And I lie on my back, I'm feeling really light. Actually kind of happy. And I tell myself a joke, and it's about somebody, I'm a Jew like me. Amy Cohen pulls up a bus, and he gets up and he moves his hand like this. And his friend said, Jaime, I didn't know you were Catholic. What do you mean Catholic? Spectacles, testicles, wallet and watch. The story went round the camps. I've tried all my life to be macho and I failed. But I had my 15 minutes of macho fame. The story went round the camps, and the first thing Comrade Albie did was reach for his balls. Seemed to be in order. Wallet, heart is okay. Spectacles. There was a crater there, but brain not affected. Watch, I've lost command, not only lost command. So humor for me, even after the operation, after I've been almost killed, humor automatically came to me as a source of resilience. And it's something found in all oppressed communities. You guys know it. You read just the way stories are told provide a kind of resilience. But that's all part of that humanity that's being retained. In the event, I'm airlifted to England. I'm in hospital there, and I get a letter. Now, you guys won't know letters. We used to lick the stamps, lick the envelopes, and I open it, and the letter says, "Don't worry, Comrade Albie, we would avenge you." And I think, avenge me? Again, a cut off the arm, blind in one eye. Is that the country we want? If we get freedom in South Africa, if we get democracy, if we get the rule of law, if we get justice, that will be my soft vengeance. Roses and lilies will grow out of my arm. And that theme of soft vengeance became the theme of my life. And it's how do you respond to hurt, to injury? Do you allow it to induce rage in you so that the only way to get rid of the hurt is to obliterate the source? Or do you use your anger to transform the negative energy into positivity? And we got a constitution out of turning the experience of oppression into never again and the world that we want. People who'd suffered so much were so eager now to build the eight, so that monarchy, to be recognized for who they were and to prevent anything happening again like what the working movement was. So that theme of soft vengeance then is something that can apply to other forms of hurt in your daily life. Even my solitary confinement that was so terrible. The minute I realized, hey, I can write a book about this, it's heirlooms. Then suddenly I'm not alone because I've got a book. And everything that happens I can record and I can tell the world one day, and hey, I'd always wanted to be a writer and now it's become a writer. It's taking that negativity and turning it into positivity. And that book, the Jail Diary of Albie Sachs, was made into a play that was put on by the Royal Shakespeare Company and BBC, filmed it and broadcast it. And just last month, Vanessa and I were in Paris for the French edition of the book to come out. So, you know, who would be interested in a book in France today about a white South African who was locked up in 1963, 64? Because the story is told in a way that's vivid and real. I'm patting myself on the back now, but I'm using that to illustrate something, that you can turn the sword into plowshares, the spears into pruning hooks. And that's something that people can use. Even if it's, you know, I've known great unhappiness in my first marriage, broke up. You never quite get over that. But there's a way of converting sorrow into something that's hopeful. And I think it even applies to nations. At a time of great tribulation, the nation is being tested, and the institutions are being tested. And my hope and expectation is that they get strengthened by being tested. That you don't just take them for granted. You don't just say, oh, it's like that, it's easy. It's not easy. It's fragile. It is vulnerable. You've learned that. Now you fight harder for those rights. The people who fought for civil rights, you fought for the vote, you fought against Jim Crow, you fought against the physical brutalities and so on. They put the energies into something, and the memory of that is very real and very strong. And the rights that were gained weren't handed on a plate to be taken away very easily. I think they're deeply entrenched in the culture, the memories of generations. They're entrenched in the institutions. And my hope and expectation is that society will come out stronger and richer, more self-reflective, more humane as a result of having been tested.
It was brilliant. It was really brilliant. I think you said a lot. Humanity, optimism, anger. And I guess I was reminded of a quote I was told, actually when I was in 5th grade. And my teacher, she told me that, anger without knowledge is pure ignorance. And I guess that in so many ways, when you were talking about, everything in totality in the country, I think that's exactly what describes what's going on right now. It's that people are angry, and we created these echo chambers, these silos to live in, and we're angry, and we don't have the knowledge, and we don't have the language to express that anger. And I think that as a result of that, you get what is now a lack of human dignity. To your point, you get exactly that. And I guess I want to ask, because I think around what makes Morehouse so special is that we sort of naturally play into human dignity, right? We see each other and we love on each other, we're affectionate to one another. But I think we don't have the language to describe what that is all the time. Now, I want to ask, if possible, could you describe what that looked like for you? Because I think you described a lot about yourself early on. Like you express human dignity in its rawest form. So could you talk a little bit about that and how we could probably put language to that and try to practice that throughout our careers in life?
I'm going to hold back more than I want to. I'm a judge. I'm visiting your country. We don't like judges coming to South Africa and telling us what we should be doing. These things are very sensitive, very public, very, very real. So I'm holding that to any particular country, any particular moment, any particular political situation. You guys know what it was. As I said in one of the films, I'm not normally at loss for words. I'm quite comfortable speaking. Morehouse is special. It's not always an advantage to be special. You can simply bask in it and assume that somehow automatically, by a kind of osmosis, the rich traditions settle on you and you become better. There's no shortcut. You need to read, you need to debate, you need to write, you need to listen to criticism, you need to work with others. I'll say that anywhere in the world. That's not a South African judge speaking to a American audience. I'll be speaking to people. And I know now when I read about so-and-so has just been given this position, he went to Morehouse, I'm going to light up. Yeah, I was there. I was speaking to those guys. If I read that somebody's been taken out of a job because he went to Morehouse, I'd have equal opposites reaction. You can't tell people to keep the spirit tight. We can tell them, but I think that's just pull up your socks, be strong. That's just easy words. I don't think they add anything. I've got a nice thing to offer you there. I think it's very nice. It pleases me if it pleases you. We all told to follow our dreams. And I'm saying, don't follow your dreams. Your dreams are usually based on what other people have done. They're kind of fantasies. I know as a young boy, I wanted to kill. I wanted to be a soldier and kill lots of people and rescue princesses. Those are my dreams. It's a kind of masculinity thing. So don't follow your dreams. Follow your life and your dreams will follow you. And that's what's happened with me. Yeah, I've got something positive to give you, Bryce. Follow your lives and your dreams will follow you. I never, ever dreamt of being a judge. I did dream of being a writer. Things that happened to me, they came to pass. Be available, be open to what might happen. And you can have an ambition, sure, and you can go for the ambition, but don't follow your dreams. Let your life take you. Prepare yourself for life. Get what you can from learning, from other people, from connections, associations. Don't try to do everything on your own. Love as much as you can, laugh as much as you can, enjoy life as much as you can. Get the roundedness, probeer God life as much as we can, and then things will happen. And the mere fact that you guys have got to this far, it's not as though you're struggling just for existence, survival. You've got a platform. So now get what you can out of Morehouse. And what you get is partly what you get from study. It's what you get from meeting people, other people. It's what you get from the arguments and debates that you have. Not for marks, not for grading, just your position in the world. Take that as much as you can. In a way, you're never quite going to have that again. Everything afterwards is going to be transactional. Not everything, but most stuff. Or you have to join a club or something or something or something. Yeah, it's laid on in spades for you. And derive as much as you can. And listen to visiting speakers as much as you can.
That was beautiful, Justice Sachs. Thank you so much for speaking with us, sharing your perspective, your hopes, your dreams. Everything really resonated with us, I know. This time we are going to ask our final question of the year. No, actually, sorry. That was our final question of the year. My apologies. So we are going to open up the questions to the audience. So if any of we have 10 minutes. Any of my brothers have any well thought out conscious questions for Justice Sachs, please come up to the podium over here, or I mean the microphone over here. And
Hello, Justice Sachs. Thank you for coming. I'm not gonna, this time that's not gonna butter you up. My question is, I know that you've lived through state-enforced segregation, helped dismantle it. When you see other states enforce this institution of apartheid and whatnot, and when you see, like, for example, like Israel's occupation of Palestinian land, restrictions on Palestinian life, what goes through your mind as someone who's seen this kind of injustice before? And more broadly, how do you view the way people sometimes invoke collective identity and or religion to defend actions that cause suffering, especially as a Jewish South African?
City development, please. See. I'll take a few questions.
please speak up so Justice Sachs can also hear you.
Thank you for coming. My question, well, my name is Caesar Stewart. I am a sophomore business major from Charlotte, North Carolina. My question was, I understand that you participated in drafting South Africa's constitution. I was wondering what was like one of the most difficult principles or values you had to agree upon like the drafting process, and how did that affect your thoughts on justice now?
Activism stopping passive development constitution problems of principles cause democracy. Oh, and there's on the back.
Hello, my name is Mason Nix. I'm a junior business administration major with a concentration in finance from Mobile, Alabama. And I just wanted to ask, I know under our current administration, a lot of white South Africans have been granted asylum in the United States, and I just wanted to hear your stance and belief on that.
Choose.
It's easy. Okay, one more questions? One more, two more?
Right. And Gaza was horrible. Indescribably horrible. And we saw it on TV. Maybe more in South Africa than here, because Al Jazeera had very full coverage of the obliteration of homes, suburbs, and so on. And how does one turn the negative into positive? And I actually do see hope that I didn't see before. We were visited at our home in Cape Town by an Arab couple from Israel. And I remember the man saying, "Albie, what do you think about the following proposition? One homeland, two states." And I thought, wow, one homeland, two states. But that's not enough. It's got to be two strong states with shared interests, mutual interests. And the shared interests would be in, first of all, ending the war, the hatreds, the never-ending anger, fear, resentment, but also shared interest in the Holy Lands, shared interest in ancient history, Semitic history, shared interest in tourism, and in poetry and art and everything. And for me, the critical thing is a strong Palestine. That's been left out of the equation. A weak, subaltern Palestine with Israeli knee in the neck, there'll always be resentments. It will always be an unequal. It will always be a continuation of the suppression of the rights of Palestinians. And that's the paradox. A strong Palestine is the guarantee of a peaceful Israel, not a weak Palestine. To get there will take time. We adopted a Freedom Charter in South Africa in 1955. He seemed crazy. South Africa belongs to all who live in it. That's why. You guys mad? The police came in, I was there. Our leaders were arrested for treason as a result. It seemed completely impossible. The whites had military power, economic power, the political power. They were in charge and getting a lot of support from the West as a barrier against communism in the Cold War setting. You've got now maybe the most advanced constitution in the world, and at least the principles of non-racism are strong. And we've got a country. We didn't have a country before. We've got a country with huge, huge, huge problems. But we've got a country, and people speak their minds. And something you won't know about rugby, we happen to be the champions of the world with the black captain, and the people hug each other, these big hulks, hug each other when somebody scores in favor of the team. And it's not only the players hug each other, in the stands, the people, black, white, brown, hugging each other. We've achieved a hell of a lot in our country. There's a long, long way to go, and we've made terrible mistakes and committed crimes in the course of the abuses of power, but we've got a country. So just the idea of vision, and now there has to be reconstruction of Gaza. The Arab states are meeting. They're meeting. And there's a possibility now of building a strong Palestinian state. If the Gazans themselves can be involved in the project through work, through building, through design, through all sorts of things that an ongoing society has. So that's my response. If you like, as a South African, certainly as me, to what's been happening there. Then the biggest battle in our constitution making process, there are two things connected. The old guard, the regime, wanted a constitution negotiated in advance and put to a referendum by self-appointed negotiators sitting around the table. And they wanted to have power sharing between black, white, and brown. That would have introduced racism into the very constitution itself. And in effect, they wanted to have a white veto over any change, however it was disguised. We, on the liberation movement side, wanted a country where human beings were treated as human beings, where citizens were equal. The fact that the majority of our people were black, that's our history. And we should have majority rule. The political organizations that get the most support should be in charge of government. They should be subjected to regular free and fair elections. And, really important, and there should be a Bill of Rights that prevents anybody from being abused because they are who they are. And the whole first part of our Constitution, the first 30 or 40 clauses, deal with a value system. The value system comes first. A long preamble, 4 fundamental features, which include non-racism and non-sexism, the rule of law, and constitutional supremacy, achievement of human rights, and multi-party democracy with free and fair elections to have a government that's accountable. These are foundation principles. And then a very long Bill of Rights, very expansive Bill of Rights. And all of that requires a strong judiciary, because it means the Bill of Rights basically is to prevent government from using its power to abuse the rights of the people. So you need a strong judiciary. And that's where South Africa has been very strong, with a strong judiciary. So we achieved that. We defeated the notion of power sharing between ethnic groups. You would have had 3 presidents. Now, Mandela on Monday, de Klerk from the Afrikaner Party on Tuesday, and Buthelezi from the Zulu-speaking people on Wednesday. It's actually been 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, sharing power, ruling by consensus. Would have been a total disaster. We avoided that. And we had a 2-stage process of constitution making. The first stage was to elect a parliament, the partial representation, 1 person, 1 vote, everybody voted. And Parliament would then draft a constitution with a 2/3 majority required within 2 years, and that constitution had to comply with 34 principles agreed to in advance. Those principles enabled the white regime to lay down their arms, to surrender monopoly political power, and the Constitutional Court had to actually decide whether the text produced by Parliament complied with those principles. Now, this wasn't just a parliament of politicos. These were people who'd been in jail, been in the underground, in the resistance, been in the trade union movement, the workers' movement, from the faith community. Very, very strong women's section with the Speaker of the House, Winfrey Jimbola, saying, now, I'm not an ANC member, I'm a woman. You're not going to hand over power from one gang of men to another gang of men. Supported by a national coalition of women outside. Very feisty, very strong, very emphatic. So we got, in that sense, a wonderful text for the Constitution. There's no major flaw. There are lots of things that could work better that we've changed, but no sort of major flaw. Backlash. I don't want to get involved in US, South Africa politics. Our leaders are dealing with that at a very sensitive level. But let me put it as politely as I can. The backlash against our Constitution has been stronger by certain forces outside our country than by people inside our country. You can interpret it any way you like. What I can say about the refugees now, the section of the community in South Africa that's benefited the most from democracy are white Afrikaners. White Afrikaners. We've got $7 billionaires. Of those 7, 1 is black, 1 is white English speaking, the other 5 are all white Afrikaners. And 4 of those 5 have made their money since democracy came. They're Afrikaans language films, newspapers, TV, churches, sports clubs, a whole range of things. One of our strongest growth industries in South Africa is stand-up comedians. You all know Trevor Noah, but there are lots more. He came from a whole community of comedians. And recently, one of the black comedians said, and I'm going to end with this, South Africa is a country of firsts. We had the first human heart transplant. And now we've got the first refugees that travel by chartered planes with visas granted to them even before they've got onto the planes. They met with open arms when they arrive. They put up in hotels and jobs are found for them.